Today we're making feathers out of yarn. You will need yarn in whatever color you would like your feather to be, floral wire or something similar, scissors, and glue. Your first step is to get your piece of floral wire to the size you'd like your feather to be. Now, just like this, it's a little floppy, a little loose, but maybe that's how you want your feather to be. I want mine to be a little more stable, so I'm going to fold mine in half and just twist it around to give it a little bit of stability. You don't have to, it's optional. Now every kit should come with a piece of floral wire. If it's too long and you want a shorter feather, feel free to snip some of that off with a good pair of scissors. Now that we have our twisted wire, we want to cover it in our longer piece of yarn. Now if you're doing this without a kit, your yarn should be approximately twice the length of your piece of wire. Okay, now that we have this piece of wire, we want to use our glue to cover the entire length and then wrap that piece of yarn around it. You will be using more of your glue in a future step, so just use enough to cover it. At this point, once you've wrapped most of the wire, be aware it's okay to have little gaps where you can still see the wire through. You're going to be covering it with yarn. Similarly, at the ends, don't worry if they're a little frayed, a little loose looking, because we'll trim that off later as well. What we want to do is we want to let this dry, and then we'll proceed to the next step. Once your wire covered yarn has dried, it will be a little crispy and it'll be easier to trim off those excess bits I mentioned earlier. So we'll just snip those off. And now we can get to the fun part of choosing a yarn color for the feather itself. Now, if you have gotten a kit from the library, you'll notice that your yarn is already pre-cut. But if you are coming up with some yarn from home, what I would recommend is that it be about the width of your hand. So it might make it easy for you if you just wrap the yarn around your hand, maybe 10, 20 times, depends on the size of your feather. And then give it a snip, carefully now, at the top and at the bottom. And that will give you yarn of about the length we're looking for. Now I'm going to use yarn that is all of one color, but if you are going to make a pattern perhaps, I encourage you to lay out your yarn in the order that you'd like it before we go to the next step. Now this step is pretty easy. What we're going to do is take those lengths of yarn that we've cut and starting a little bit from the bottom, again, not precise, just about where the bottom of a feather would be, you're going to tie a knot. If you want to double knot it, you can, but we are going to eventually be covering this all in glue, so it's not necessary. Now we're going to proceed to cover the whole length in those pieces. We're going to tie on that last piece of yarn all the way to the end of the wire. Now, if you're thinking at this point, that does not look anything like a feather, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. What we're going to do though is we are going to fill the rest of our glue cup that is in everyone's take and make bag with water. So we have a watery, gluey mix. Shake it up really well and prepare to get a little bit messy. So here's the messy step. What you may want to do is get a small plate or a bowl, or even just use the bag that your kit came in. And that is what we are going to rest the feather on while we cover it in gluey water or watery glue. What you may want to do is comb out your little bits of yarn, make sure they're laying flat. And then we're going to pour some glue on it. Here's the gross part. It's not gross, it just feels a little bit icky, but we'll get through this. We're combing the watery glue through all of the yarn, trying to immerse it basically. And then when you've covered this side, go ahead and flip it over. Ugh, gluey. And do the same on the other side. And you're also combing it out, laying it flat. And as you pull it, doing that, you may want to try to shape this end to look more like the end of a feather. Are we getting there? Is it looking more feather-like? Now, once you feel comfortable that the entire thing has been soaked in that watery glue, I encourage you to put it on that plastic bag, or you can hang it from somewhere and let it dry, which may take a while. Once your feather has dried, it will be fairly stiff. And what you can do at this point is, if you like, you can leave it just how it is. But if you'd like to trim it down, trim off those, well, feathery edges and make it something a little more crisp, you can. It's just a personal preference. There's no right or wrong way. Okay. And there you go. Now you have a feather made out of yarn. Once you have your feathers, it is up to you what you want to do with them. You could put a pin backing on it and wear it. You could stick it in a hat band, of course. You could tie a longer length of yarn on it and add it to a zipper for a zipper pull, perhaps on a backpack. Sky's the limit. In honor of Pride Month this June, pick up a specially marked grab and go kit to make a feather the colors of a pride flag. Grab and go craft kits are available at the Makachek, Schlafly, or Cabiny locations.